Take roll and call the meeting in the service order. Margaret Gentile.
Here.
Emily Britt,
Here.
Paul Nelson,
Here.
Jack Manick,
Here.
and Brad Howe. We're all here. We have a quorum. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. And if you're joining for the opening convocation, and pledges to the flags. Hey, Kyle, we thank you for your love and care for us. We thank you for the great community you put us in, the opportunity we have to serve you. We pray that all we do tonight will be done in order and service to our community will be done for your glory, your honor. We pray these things in Christ's name. Coming to the pledge to the U.S. flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you all. Any comments from the public? No. Okay. Any adjustments? Consent agenda, items 5 through 8 are in the packet. Any comments or questions on those? Okay,
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 5 through 8.
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. And that takes us to our regular agenda, item 9. Brian, I think that's yours.
Yeah, I'll cover 9 through 17. Y'all. So I'll get through it quick. All right, first, item 9 is to accept the qualification statements, bonds, oaths of office, and affidavits of current director for directors Hout, Unit, and Costello. So we did have the canvas election or the canvas results meeting last week. We canvassed the results of those elections. We had both Brad and Jack were reelected, and then we had the new director elected, Tom Costello, who's here today. And so now that we have canvassed those results, we can take action to accept the qualification statements, bonds, et cetera. And then we will perform the oath for Tom, and then he will be able to participate in the remainder of the meeting. I don't typically do the full oath for our returning directors. Y'all sign the oath, which meets your legal requirement. Questions or discussion on item number 9?
Does it make a difference if you were appointed and then elected? Because you said reelected.
Well, when you're seated, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right, need a motion to approve item number 9.
Motions.
Okay.
Approve.
A second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, I will conduct the oath. And you go for by Thomas or Tom? Tom. All right. You would stand, please, sir, and we'll administer the oath. At the end, just say I will or I do. Do you, Thomas Costello, solemnly swear or affirm that you will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Director, Montgomery County Bank number 7 for the state of Texas, and with the best of your ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and law of the United States and of this state, so help you God? Congratulations. Thank you. Come have a seat. Paul, thank you very much for all your service to the board over the years. I know it's been, how long have you been on the board?
Trying to think.
Somebody might know.
I was thinking I was the second time, so 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, on behalf of Woodlands Water and 7, we wanted to give this plaque to you. It says, our sincere thank you and appreciation for exceptional leadership and dedicated service to Montgomery County Municipal Utility District number 7. Dates of service are December of 2018 through May of 2026. It's pretty close. Yeah.
And I was on a few other MUDs before that.
And you've worked in the water industry for what, probably 50 years?
Boy, yeah, close to 50. That's sad. But I've been very lucky that in most of my life had been revolved around the water subject of water from quality, et cetera. And I think I've been one of those guys lucky enough to have a vocation that was my same as my avocation. So I'm not going to go away. Y'all know I'm not embarrassed to say what I want to say. I will say that I was just telling Brad that most of the ones that I'm sitting with were fairly new and to the business, I think. But I think that they've all dug in and tried to learn as much as they could, not coming here with the thought that they knew everything. So anyway, I very much appreciate the award and I appreciate the time. And I said, I will hope to come back, and if you do everything right, I won't be speaking publicly. Thanks so much.
Paul, we also went from the directors, not as fancy as a plaque, but maybe more useful.
Yeah.
With Woodlands Water logo on it. In the
Yeah.
back, it says, "To appreciation your service, Paul Nelson, MUD 7 Director."
Oh, that's so great. I think I've been thinking for 15 years about how I wish the Woodlands Water, so you could show that you were drinking municipal water. It didn't cost $6 a gallon. Now I have.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for your service.
I think you're seated now.
Come on up and you can participate in the remainder of the agenda. We know who he is.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Item number 10, elections not to disclose certain personal confidential information of our directors. We did receive those forms for each of our directors elected for the 2026 through 2030 term. That keeps their home address, phone number, social security number, all confidential. That's allowed by the Public Information Act. We have a motion to accept those documents under item 10. Motion, we have a second.
I second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 11, election of officers to the board. So refer to the cover page of the packet there. It has a list of who all the current officers and trustees are. You know, we can handle this however y'all would like. We obviously have a vacancy for assistant secretary treasurer that at a minimum we need to fill. We can go through each of these offices separately, or y'all have vast majority of your board that is still the same. So if you want to keep your other positions the same and nominate for the vacancy, we can do that as well. Up to the board.
Oh, Brad, you want
Yeah.
to continue to be the president in addition to the trustee?
So I'm open if somebody else wanted to be president. I'm willing to step aside, but if nobody else, I shouldn't say that. If that you would prefer me to remain, I'm willing to remain. So anybody else has thought about it?
I'd like to see you continue as president.
I'm willing to do it if you want to step aside. It's up to you.
Okay, so I'm not doing the other. So if you want it, speak.
If you're fine doing it, continue to do it. It's up to you. Just a way to offload you if you need a little bit more time to spend as a trustee.
Or do a vote on one at a time?
Well, if you're the trustee, though, you have to be the president.
No, you don't, no.
You don't?
No,
Okay,
that's-
I see.
They can be, you can be trustee, not be president.
We have a nomination then for president. Any other nominations? Not, nominations are closed. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that covers president. Vice President, Marta, you are currently vice president. Do we have a nomination for vice president?
I'll nominate Marta.
I would like to continue to.
Okay, we have a nomination for Marta. Any other nominations? Not, nominations are closed. All in favor of Marta, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, secretary. So that's where the work is. You got to sign those documents. Emily is currently secretary treasurer. Do we have a nomination for secretary treasurer?
No.
Would you like?
I'd like to continue.
Yeah, I'll nominate.
All right, we have nomination, other nominations for secretary treasurer. If not, nominations are closed. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Assistant secretary treasurer, Jack, you are currently assistant secretary. Then we have a vacancy. We normally have two just in case our secretaries, not able to be in attendance and there's something that needs to be signed. So, if Tom would be willing to serve as an additional assistant secretary, and if Jack is willing to continue to serve in that role, then we can consider a nomination for those positions for assistant secretary treasurer.
If you're willing, I'll nominate Paul or Tom and Jack. Shouldn't look at the paper.
All right, any other nominations? Nominations are closed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that will take us now to appointment of trustee and alternates. So Brad is trustee, Emily is first alternate, Marta is second alternate. Do we have a nomination for trustee?
Brad.
Okay. Any other nominations? Not, nominations are closed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is first alternate. Emily is first alternate. Do we have a nomination for first alternate?
I'm on.
I'd like to continue.
All right. Any other nominations? Not, they're closed. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Next, second alternate, Marta.
Nomination. I'll nominate.
Nomination, any others? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Got that taken care of. Item 13, district registration form. That's an administrative document that's filed with the TCEQ, has factual information about the district, including who the directors are, what their terms of office are, and their officer positions. We've obviously updated some of that information today. So we need a motion to authorize us to complete that form and file it with the TCEQ.
So moved.
Motion in a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next is the local government officer list. So we need to update that to now reflect that Tom is a director on the board. Do we have a motion on item 14?
I make a motion.
And a second, Marta? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 15, the training requirements. So Tom, in your materials there's a memo regarding training for the Texas Open Meetings Act and the Public Information Act. You can go to, there's a link on the memo where you can go to the AG's website and watch 2 1-hour videos, one for public information, one for open meetings. When you complete that, there's a certificate of completion for each course. You can send that to Shelley, and that will evidence that you've completed your training. The good news is you only have to do it once throughout your entire term as a director. So I can't say the same thing about the later training we talk about, but for this one, you do it once and that satisfies your requirements. No actions necessary there. Item 16, conflicts disclosure reporting requirements. So there's also a memo in your packet, Tom, that addresses potential conflicts. Vast majority of the time, there's no issue with conflicts. If there is a potential issue, it's always very fact specific. So if you think you may have one, give me a call. We can talk about what the facts are and what action you might need to take. So no actions required there as well. Item 17, this is actually for all directors. Changes in cybersecurity and artificial intelligence training requirements for directors. So there's a memo in the packet that goes over that. Shelley will also email y'all an electronic version to where the hyperlinks are active and you have to type in all the, question marks and equal signs and all that to be able to get to the website. basically, you may recall, everybody except for Tom, a couple of years ago, we talked about cybersecurity training, but you didn't have to do it unless you used a district computer system for more than 25% of the time for your service as a director. Well, and so we talked about, well, if you access the district's Wi-Fi system, would that qualify you if you're using the Google Drive? And the recommendation then was, look, if you think you might qualify, just go ahead and watch it and satisfy the training requirement. But for a lot of directors, especially outside the Woodlands, it didn't apply and they didn't have to watch it. The legislature has changed the requirements, and now all directors are required, regardless of whether they have access or use a district computer system, now have to take cybersecurity training. So the same training we talked about before, just now it's mandatory. And now there's a second training requirement that the legislature has mandated, and that is the artificial intelligence training. And that training uses the old metric for cybersecurity, that you have access to the computer system, all that stuff. So, kind of use your best judgment, similar to what we talked about before for cybersecurity. If you think you might hit that threshold for usage, go ahead and complete the training for both. Now, what's different on this training versus the training for PIA and open meetings, it is not a one-time deal, it's annual. So you have to complete it each year, and the first compliance deadline is the end of this August. So I would suggest go ahead and get it completed sooner. Tom, I forgot to mention, 90 days is the deadline for your training. Again, I would say just do it sooner rather than later. But the cybersecurity and the artificial intelligence training deadline for the first completion is the end of August, and then it's annually thereafter. There is no certificate of completion for these, according to some directors who've already completed it already. So we're going on the honor system. So send an email to Shelley, letting her know that you've completed one or both of the trainings, and that will evidence your compliance for this current fiscal year. That's all I have on training. Happy to answer questions if you have them. Right, that's it. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you, Brad.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
2 oath of office in here. We have to execute both of these.
Yeah, we have two originals.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Yes, sir.
So on the item 18, normal business, Chris, you got the monthly update?
We have a couple items today. The first is that in your packet between pages 19 and 34 is the Woodlands and GRP monthly operations report. There's no violations, no major expenses that occurred that were unexpected during the month. You'll see on page 20 towards the top, surface water, groundwater blend is off slightly. It's 52% groundwater to 48% surface water. We try to keep it around 50-50 for the fiscal year. So throughout the year, it's going to fluctuate a little bit, but we're going to get back on track. A couple of updates on quick projects y'all have asked about before. One is on page 26, the Woodlands Division at the top of it, Woodlands Division disinfection byproduct study. We have the final study. It's been wrapped up. Comment period ended May 15th. Just confirmed with Aaron, so he's going to give me that final study. I'll get it to Eric, and he can pass it to y'all to review. The other item is on page 23 at the bottom. This is the owner's advisor for wastewater plant 1. This is something Aaron will go into a little bit here in a little bit with his project plan presentation, but the owner's advisor project was approved by the trustees last week. And that is going to be a repair in place option only for wastewater plant 1. And so what they're going to do is essentially do come up with a tiered replacement strategy of the plant over a 20-year period. And then also look at re-rating the facility to see if it actually needs to go up, down, sideways, whatever the right sizing the facility may be. So that was approved last month or last week, and that will take roughly 12 months to complete. And there will be a couple all mud meetings about halfway through to bring you up to speed, and one at the end just to kind of explain everything. Then we're going to come back, seek direction from y'all, and then put that information into the project plan for next year. So year-long process, but y'all will definitely be involved as well as the rest of the MUDs over the next 12 months. That is all I have, except for passing it to Aaron. Do you have any questions on the report?
All right, moving on to presentation, which is a presentation on paper. Starting on page 35 of y'all's packet is a PowerPoint presentation, well, it's a PowerPoint as well as on the paper. Of our 10-year project plan update for,
Can I
yes,
stop? I mean, so I'm trying to figure out where this was. So are you on item 19 and this is the 10-year plan rather than the Woodlands Division budget?
yes.
So, yeah, so 19 is not needed. That's actually next month's item. So what we've been doing is, like the trustees, we've been including this project update on 18. As far as the update on projects and everything else.
19 is not happening.
Correct. That budget will come next month.
That's just an error on the agenda or
Yeah, it should have said,
10-year plan. Yeah, okay. I didn't notice that on the trustee. I went back and checked and it was the same. So I thought, okay, but I just want to make sure. Did we get that reflected that we didn't talk about the budget this month?
Yeah.
We talked about the 10-year plan,
Plans, yeah.
not the Woodlands Division budget. Okay. So,
It's just received and discussed, no action on project plan and really no action on it at all. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, how that all works. But every year, as far as the Woodlands Division budgeting process for the coming fiscal year, which in our case we have FY27, we update the 10-year project plan, and a lot of people refer to it as the CIP and other entities. But it's a 10-year look ahead on the large projects, whether it be ones that go from design to bid to build, or studies of certain parts of our infrastructure, planning for future needs, laying that all out into a 10-year plan so that we can not only have a prioritized list of projects as far as the priority is concerned and how soon we need to do them, but also then to plan ahead for the funding to do those projects. So every year we update this. Pretty much the ones that we really have to nail down are the ones for the coming fiscal year, because those go into the budget for that coming fiscal year. This presentation, by the way, has already been presented to the audit committee, which Brad is on. That was about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago. And then last week we presented it to the Woodlands Water trustees. For the benefit of some of the newer folks here, what is a 10-year project plan? As I mentioned, it's a series of projects like a CIP, where you're planning ahead using your asset management strategy. We have a adopted asset management plan in correlation with studies. We have done many studies over the past number of years, and I'll get into that in a little bit, to look at our different parts of our infrastructure, whether that's water plants, wastewater plants, the linear assets, water lines, wastewater lines, elevated storage tanks, lift stations, etc. And determining, what kind of condition they're in, what kind of longevity that they have, what we could do in the future to either keep them running as they are in rehabilitation work, or to outright replace them if they get to that point. So that's how this all works out. Like I said, we just need to plan ahead so we have the money on hand when it's needed. But however, it's fluid and not set in stone. So I mentioned we've done studies in the past. We will be doing more studies as part of this project plan. Every 10 years or so, we like to do a refresh of those studies on those different parts of the infrastructure so that we can look back on where we were and where we're at now, and see if the conditions and the circumstances have changed. Sometimes you just have failures in the system that come out of the blue, and that reprioritizes things as well. Moving on to slide 37, which pretty much I just talked about, doing studies, looking long-term viability in conjunction to our asset management plan. Moving on to slide 38. So this is just kind of a snapshot of a variety of the different studies that we've done in the past few years. Of course, the infrastructure, water wells, like storage tanks, the wastewater system, AC water line condition-based assessment, and so on. Get into a little bit more detail on those. Go to the next slide, 39. you can see, and then this is even not all inclusive because I just kind of ran out of room on the slide. But you can see for the most part, most of the projects that did result from studies over the past few years, where you have a heading depending on what type of infrastructure it is. Top bullet being a study that was previously performed. Second bullet is typically a study then that we have planned as a follow-up somewhere in the 10-year project plan. And then below that, you'll see a series of 6-digit number codes which correspond to the projects in the 10-year project plan and how those are all laid out. So you can see that we do a lot of homework, a lot of analysis with consultants and in-house with our operators and maintenance staff to make this project plan and do it in a way that makes sense as the needs come up for the infrastructure. So how do we see? I had 40. Okay, yeah. So slide 40. So how do we fund these projects when they come along? Well, as the wholesale operator, we take in revenue from water wastewater rates, and then that goes to 3 main places: operating fund, emergency reserve, and the debt service reserve, which currently we have some bonds from 2017 that we're paying off the debt reserve, the debt on, and you have to have the reserve in place. Then going on from the operating fund, which includes all the different things for the fiscal year, including the proceeds to go to the R&R fund, which I'll talk about here in a second, but also includes salaries, insurance, chemicals, all that type of stuff. And Chris will talk about that next month.
How do you decide how much to put in the emergency reserve?
By resolution, there's a resolution that was done to create the R&R fund and kind of define the emergency reserve, and it states that it's supposed to start at $2 million and increase every year by the engineering CPI.
So every time we do a plan for a coming year's fiscal year budget, we plan for a transfer on a monthly basis over that coming fiscal year into the R&R fund for these projects. And the R&R fund will set up so that you could have an ongoing fund for defined projects where the funds themselves would live with the projects rather than have to be cut off each fiscal year as you start and stop. It just allows for continuity with the project rather than having to reintroduce it every time you have a fiscal year. Also, we have gotten a grant from the federal government, a community grant to pay for one project or most of one project, which relates to flood mitigation at a lift station. And then the remaining projects, which are more of the major projects, which are transfers to the R&R, just cannot keep up with, exceeds the entire O&M budget for large maintenance projects. So we had in 2017 over $40 million from a bond. We spent about half of that on projects we've already done, and we still have about half left, which will be funding several projects, both that are ongoing and continuing in 2027, and some that'll start in 2027 and go on the further fiscal years. So we're going to use those up.
Maybe this isn't a funding question. Maybe it's for somebody else other than you, but it seems like it's a 2-step process. There's authorization of the bonds, which generates the funds. And then there's a follow authorization on an annual budget to spend the money that's from the bonds. Or is that
I don't think it's an annual thing, is it, Chris? It's just it's just continuation as the projects come along.
well, I mean, okay, but I mean, the money that's generated by the bonds does it have to be approved as part of a 10-year project plan and an annual budget?
We include it in the project plan as informational purposes, but the actual proceeds come from the bonds. So the supplemental agreement that authorizes the bonds also gives us the authority to spend it just on those projects. That's what we did in 2017.
So once you approve the authorization, we have no say over how that money is spent.
Brad, we have received, we're going to cover this on the next item.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's why.
Yeah, so we've received some feedback, including yours, about the drafting the supplemental, and so we are, Eric and I are working on some revisions to that to address some of those concerns, including that one, so
Okay.
we'll have more to come on that.
Okay. This makes it look like it's part of this work process, of moving money from the bonds to the project.
So the 2017 bond said, in this case, it said we could only spend it on 3 projects. So any project we want to spend it on, other than those 3 named projects, we do have to go back to y'all for authorization to spend it.
If you don't spend it, where does it go? It just stays there.
It just stays there until, yeah, I mean,
Well,
you're gonna have
ultimately-
arbitrary.
Yeah, ultimately it goes to the R&R fund. The supplemental agreement has kind of a residual destination. So once a project is completed or deemed unnecessary for some reason, which I don't think the projects we're talking about would be deemed unnecessary. We've got a lot of scrubbing to get to this point. But let's say we get lucky and the costs come in lower than what's anticipated, residual funds would go to the R&R account, the refund and rehabilitation account for future projects that would then flow into the annual budget that's approved by the trustees for the River Authority.
So the other source of funds that are as a current unrealized are those ones still for the projects such as the water line placement projects. We also have some wastewater projects further out in the future, which we will reevaluate as part of some studies that we'll do in a few years. They were originally based on a study done in 2017, so we're going to redo that again in a couple of years to reprioritize those if necessary. But the supplement agreement that y'all been talking about is for those first 2 water line replacement projects, those tier 1 projects. So as of now, they're considered unfunded. Next page, 41, just kind of an overall way of the way we present the budget, and kind of gotten into that already a little bit. But as far as y'all are concerned, the process starts in May of the the year of the next before the fiscal year starts for us. So that is when we do the presentation of the 10-year project plan. Then next month, we'll make the presentation of the draft O&M budget, which I mentioned includes the funding for those deposits to the R&R fund for 2027. And then ultimately in July of 2026, there will be a recommendation from the MUDs to their trustee on how to vote on the budget. And then that happens in August by the trustees. And ultimately then the new fiscal year starts with that new budget, September 1, 2026. But overall, our actual project and planning and our budget planning for the next fiscal years started back in October-ish, not long after the past fiscal year started. So we're going to be always in a planning mode as far as that's concerned. The next page, 42. So this is kind of one big thing of note from where we've been and where we are to where we're going for now. So the past 2 years in the project plan, we had roughly $700 million worth of projects. This year's proposed project plan is $353 million worth of projects. So roughly half, or a little less than half than last year. The reason behind that is that till last year, we had planned for the potential of going forward with a replacement of the wastewater plant number 1 in a variety of different ways, but planning for the overall capital expenditure to build that new plant. After more discussion and further direction, we're taking that out for now. Particularly now that we're looking at a process of replace in place or repair in place at the existing facility. In addition, the analysis of the SFDUEs by Woodlands Water Agency. Is going to feed us information with a consultant who was approved as part of the owner's advisor project, as Chris mentioned earlier, to take that data and look at regulations and then look at what the right size for the wastewater plant needs to be. And also from that, look at the facility needs over the next 20 years and see when we need to actually implement projects to repair, rehab, or replace those parts of the plant infrastructure.
This amount here, is this a 10-year projected cost?
$353 million, that's the 10-year cost for all those projects that are in this project
In the
plan.
10-year period, or some of them overlap beyond the 10-year period?
This is just for the 10-year period itself.
10-year period.
Yes, sir.
Keep in mind that, as Aaron's saying, that does not include anything for wastewater plant 1 at this time.
I'll make see about that. Also, when we did the waterline condition-based assessment project or study, that shifted out some of the projects further out into the future, past the 10-year period, which also reduced that dollar amount as well. Moving on then to,
Just,
Yes, sir.
I want to check, make sure everybody understands what you just said. This FY 26 and FY 27 are not an apples and oranges comparison from a scope standpoint.
no,
The 27 excludes any costs associated with treatment plant number 1, repair or replace or maintain. And slide 2043 kind of talks about that, but just be careful that you don't think we magically saved $300 million. We just have taken it out of scope right now.
yeah, let's
Okay.
move to the next slide. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Once you determine, do you take that to TCQ to get approved?
That would be all part of that process. That's right.
And how long does that take?
Well, the actual analysis, so this will be a 12-month analysis. And then from there, it's bringing that information back to y'all. Then we don't have funds to implement any of that as it is. So that might be one of the next steps beyond that, but that could be another year in itself.
Yeah, when you're talking to re-rating, there's a lot of conversation that needs to go into it because the average daily flow permitted may go down, but your peak may go up. So one of the things to consider is you may just want to stay exactly where you are. But we can talk about that once the owner's advisor actually starts getting data to you. So.
And that effort will be kicked off in June, just to let y'all know. So moving on to the next page, this is Brad was alluding to, now we're down to $353 million. That doesn't mean that's all in all done forever. What we need now to look at is what are the needs for the next 10 years from this evaluation. And place in place or repair in place, you're looking at, our best estimates as of right now, looking at the list of projects that we're anticipating needing to be done on the right side, being somewhere between $75 million and $150 million over that next 10-year period. So that's kind of where you could say you could jump back up to if start at 353, and but that's just an estimate, a very high level estimate, and so we'll see where we go from there.
That 150 added to 350 takes you up to 500, which really shows the 200 we're saving by not doing all the transmission lines and doing a repair and replace rather than build new. The $200 million drop is more reasonable savings than 350.
That is the difference, yeah.
Oh, thank you. For aeration basins 1 and 2, you'll go all the way through the Corello process before you kick off the update designs to those aeration basins.
Unless y'all want to give me money beforehand, because I got no money for it. I do have some funding for it. I have about 1.8 million set aside that I could go ahead and reinitiate design. But that also goes back to the re-rating. Right now, they're designed for 7.8 and 18 MGD. If the collective MUD say, no, we need to re-rate it to 6 average day flow and 24 peak, the design's worthless, has to be redone entirely. So safest bet's probably to wait to the end.
None of the 2017 bond money is allocated towards those.
The original 2017 bond money was allocated to it, but then through the whole strategic planning process of the last 5 years, that those funds were reallocated to South Shore and other projects.
South Shore filter
Higher
project.
priorities. Yeah.
Main project, that's right. So after this is a list of the projects in different slides that were started in FY 26 and will continue in the 27 and possibly in the 28, or we'll start in 27 and move forward. For sake of y'all's time, I know you have a lot on your agenda. All this was discussed in a very detailed discussion at the trustees meeting. That video is available on the YouTube channel. So I do have 2 projects I want to just go real quick, and those are the ones on 45 and 46. Those are the town center water line replacement project, and then the Woodlands Parkway water line replacement project. So those were the 2 that were identified as tier 1 projects from that water line condition-based assessment. So Havens Town Center was already under design from before then, and is covered by R&R funds for design. However, beyond that point, we have no funds left to get land acquisition for easements or construct that project. Woodlands Parkway water line replacement, we have no funds whatsoever to design or build that project or getting easements we need. So that is what is being reflected in that supplemental agreement that's being considered currently. Beyond that, for the most part, everything else project-wise is covered by either R&R funds, those 2017 bonds that are remaining, or that one that's covered by that community grant from the federal government. But does anybody have, Paige, are there any specific questions on those projects from there onto page 64 or 63 rather? These are all also in much more further details explained in the actual project plan. So, and there you'll have much more thorough description of the background, the justification for the project, the current circumstances, the budget allocation and schedule as far as design, phases each fiscal year, funding source, the schedule, when we do design, when we do construction, all that good information, a map usually. So of course you have an opportunity to send those questions on to Eric, as we go along in the next month as well.
You might mention on 64 that you're moving money out of O&M to R&R.
Yeah, I was going to get to that one. That's one I was wanting to note. Also, just to note too, that the individual pages for those projects at the top under the title of the project, it reflects the page number and the project plan. But yes, on 64, one thing that we're doing a little differently this year is in the past, we had always big, major projects that were in the project plan R&R funded, which means that the funds carried along with the project. However, we would have some smaller projects, which are ongoing maintenance type projects, such as valve replacements, pinhole rehabs, painting at the wastewater and water plants and facilities, but usually ongoing buckets of money that were pretty much the same every year to cover those type of expenses for maintenance. However, it really didn't make much sense to have all that kind of in a different pot where you had all these projects in one pot, but then the other pot was more for salaries and chemicals and insurance and things of that nature. So this time we're transferring all that budget for those projects into the R&R fund. So those transfers will increase a little bit to cover that cost, and will allow that money to continue with the projects rather than be cut off by the fiscal years. Moving on to slide 65. This is just for 2027, as mentioned. That's what we're really focusing on as far as the O&M budget is concerned, that you'll be hearing about next month. And particularly the R&R funded projects, because those are the ones that are funded by O&M. So for our water projects, $9.4 million in 2027. Wastewater projects R&R funded at $3.3 million. 2017 bonds, as mentioned, we have roughly $23 million left over right now. 2027, we're anticipating to spend close to 11 or over $10 million. Remainder of that balance will still be spent in the future after that. Federal funding, roughly half of that amount for the first part of that project at that lift station. And then non-funded projects, again, town center water lines, structural land acquisition, and then the preliminary engineering phase of Woodlands Parkway water line replacement, $15,262. So total amount we're looking at utilizing in FY27 between all those funding sources is roughly $39 million. Overall,
You go talk about the balance in the R&R funds.
and so let me get back to that. So as of right now, we're projecting that at the end of fiscal year 26, or no, I'm sorry, well, as of May the 1st, 2026, so fairly recent, we have a balance in the R&R fund of close to $30 million. And just that goes to show that, okay, we're looking at 2027 to spend, roughly $13 million. We still have just amounts to spend in the remaining part of FY 2026. So that shows that we have the cash on hand in our R&R fund to be able to afford to continue those projects up into FY 27.
I'm a little confused because in the blue guideline, it says 2017 bonds,
Mhm.
10 million. But
Mhm.
then you look down at the asterisk and it says 22 million. So,
About that.
10 million, this is just for 27, FY 27, so, I mean, as of right now, the balance that we have available from those 2017 bonds originally was over $40 million.
right,
From 2017 to now, we spent the amount we needed, so that's down to $0.3 million. So we well, spending $10 million of that. So after that, you'd have about $12 million left over.
You want to rest your voice for a minute?
Yeah.
All right.
So think of the bonds as a pot of money. And it was $40 million. They spent a little less than 18 million, leaving $22 million in that pot. And they're proposing they spend 10 million of that in 2017, of the 20, for the 2017 bond money in 2027.
Right.
And that'll leave another 11 to 12 million for the additional projects, continuation of those projects in 2028 and beyond.
so we'll have money left over in the R&R fund as well.
Yeah, so the R&R funds are different. It's a different pot.
Right, right,
Okay. Currently, that pot has almost $30 million in it.
Okay.
And that'll go towards 9 million for water projects, 3.3 million for the wastewater projects. Okay. And what we're showing is the non-funded projects is 15 million. That's what the new supplemental agreement is to help offset. But my comment was we have money to support the beginning of that spending even before we get the supplemental agreement in place. But you never want to, you never want, unlike the bond balance, which you will take to zero, The R&R fund should never go to zero.
Right.
Okay. Because you're always having stuff in progress that you have to have money to finish.
And we're required to keep it at least at 2+, right?
No, that's the emergency reserve fund.
Right.
The emergency.
The R&R does not have any requirement for funding or anything. It's an annual allocation from the O&M budget that y'all approve in July and August to the R&R fund. But like Brad said, there are big projects. Lift Station 5 that was approved in March is 9.5 million. EST 6 is about 12 to 14 million. So that takes multiple years of funding to get that balance up because I have to pre-fund everything. So prior to me letting any of these contracts, I need to have all the funds on hand. So those two projects alone, over the next 2 years, I have to carry $20 million to fund those two. So
Yeah, what brings it into perspective is on page 66 is the overall 10 years. So in the following 9 years, you've got minus the 12 from the previous slide. You've got 101 minus 12 and change. That the delta of that 30 million would help to fund year over year over year. Plus you're pre-funding your R&R account each year by 6 or 6.25 or 7, etc.
Mhm.
So as that builds each year, that starts to keep chewing into the 101 over 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The R&R fund, it just takes the annual allotment that we put into it and adds it to the 30 million to come up with another one. One thing, this transfer here, right, we're gonna put $6-7 million every year.
Correct.
Assuming that goes towards that every year.
That's 30.
Plus the 30, exactly.
So Jack, one of the things I asked for in the trustee meeting was to see a cash flow timeline. So you could see money going and coming. So you know
What the planned
what
expenditures
what
are.
planned expenditures are, when it is, when you need the money, and how low the balances go, and how high it goes. I mean, you could argue if you got $50 million in the bank, maybe we got too much at one point.
So that's a request you guys made that it's gonna be.
Sorry about that. So overall, though, I'm not sure what slide y'all ended up on, but 66. So again, this is just a plan as we best have developed it from the studies we've done. We will have updated studies performed to update this as needed. Over a 10-year plan, our funded projects, roughly $101 million. 2070 bonds, so that kind of shows you right there that we will be utilizing over that 10-year period what was remaining in those bond amounts of that roughly $23 million that was left over. Federal funding utilizing that full $1.825 million for that lift station project. And the non-funded projects, 10-year period, $227 million. It includes those 2 water line projects, but it also includes other water line projects, the tier 2 projects, as well as some gravity sewer line projects that were identified in a 2017 study for rehabilitation. These are quite lengthy and large projects. However, they're further out in the 10-year plans, so we're able to then reevaluate them in a couple of years to see if the need for that large rehab project for each one is necessary, particularly within the 10-year period, or if it could be pushed out, or if it could be, something reduced in scope could be done. But being that said, those projects are not funded either through any of their budget means, not the R&R, not the 2017 bonds, or any other trigger. So that would require some other method of funding in the future as we get to that point. And that's shown, those projects are all shown on pages 67 and 68, sort of by water and wastewater. And that's it all in a nutshell. But again, Chris will be bringing the draft of the O&M budget next month for discussion. And go from there.
So our decision down the road is to continue to increase, or do we increase rates? At one point, do we say this is too big a amount to covered by rate increases. And we want to go do a bond. Or not do a bond, but do a tax increase. They do the bonds. I'll do bonds. We only do tax increases.
Rate increase.
Yeah, right, yeah, right. But that, I mean, that's, and that's why you want to work with a big picture. You want, because you don't want to say, okay, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and it's all incremental. And then you realize you've dug yourself a hole, or you could have done something smarter if you had a whole outlook. So,
In the end, how much money do we need?
well, we need to
Based on
figure out
this.
what we're gonna do with wastewater treatment plant number one. If that's 75 million or 150 million or 200 million, that could be big swing.
Put a time frame on it too.
Yeah, right. And, we talked about potential for, some tiered bonds where you do one set, we talked about 70 million and then something else down the road. Yeah, but we want to have consistency. We want to have a master plan that we don't go back to the public with, oh, we're doing a bond this year, we're doing a bond next year, we're doing a bond next year. I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, that you'll want to, I mean, it's up to the board how you handle it from a political perspective, but I think in your outreach, you are going to want to be able to provide a roadmap. I mean, federal tax law limits you on how much bond proceeds you can receive at a time because you have to make representations that you reasonably expect to expend those proceeds over a 2-year or so period. So you can't, I was talking about this in a previous board meeting. Right now, the interest rate environment is kind of, it's not terrible, it's not great, but if you had an environment where the rate was incredible, you had a drop in rates for some reason, you may be tempted to say, oh, I'd like to go ahead and gather as much. You can't do that. So there will be a series of bond issues because there's nothing else of that limitation. So you'll probably want to give your residents some level of visibility into that future, so that they don't think, oh, okay, you're doing this bond issue or you're doing these two and we're done. Because then they feel like, oh, well, I didn't get the full story. So I think that's the goal there, is to anticipate that possible issue and address it before it becomes an issue.
Good job, Aaron. Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
It's a great segue to the next item.
Yeah, but there's no paper there.
That's the handouts up here.
Okay, what do we, which one is it?
5 pages with a small page on the front. Not the green.
No, no, I haven't.
Something new, something.
Okay, Tom's got one.
Jack, you got that?
Like they do.
I have the white one. That's the one I looked. Yeah, we got it.
Part you got this one.
Yes, sir.
So as part of the supplemental, there's comments that Brian mentioned earlier, that'll be next month. In the meantime, there was questions about, well, what is the impact for tier 1 projects on 1, on 2? You saw those numbers last month. That was on this spreadsheet. And then the question was, well, based on this timeline from this spreadsheet, what would the impact be as it relates to rates, water rates? And then I also asked for us to look at it, just out of curiosity, what would it be on the tax rates? And so the big sheets are the background or backup. And what I did is I pulled all the data off of the big sheets and summarized it into the front smaller sheet. So what you see here is, as we're talking about water rates, and there's basically 4 scenarios, 2 bond duration scenarios, one a 20-year bond, one a 25-year bond, for both the first bond for tier 1 and tier 2 of the water line projects. So the resultant impact to the customer, if you did a 20-year bond on first bond, would be about $4.53. Second bond, and keep in mind that was, I think, 32 million, and then the second bond was about 30 million roughly. So
What's your estimate of what average homeowner would use in terms of water?
from 10,000.
10,000.
Yeah, is our average. So that'd be $4.53 monthly impact. to the average water user. And then for the first bond, be 427 for a total over the next 5 years of about 880. If you look at the 25-year bonds, you can see that the monthly impact is smaller slightly, although what you're ending up doing is you're extending that debt, and over the long term of the debt, you're increasing the overall expense on the projects just because you're financing it longer. And then on the tax rate side, kind of something similar as it relates to the average homestead. You can see those numbers per MUD down there. As Brad was saying a minute ago, I think what you probably look at doing is moving forward with at least the first one, under that program. And then in a year's time, you're going to have the more information on the wastewater treatment plant. You can likely refresh the numbers on tier 2 projects. And then you'd have the second bond here for Williams Parkway. So you would have all of those are the big ones. Those are all the big items in the 10-year project plan. And so you might look at it holistically at that point, like Brad was saying, to say, okay, do we continue down the path of the rate performance? Or we look at it maybe on the, from the standpoint of what's on the bottom of the sheet and look at it on a tax perspective and just see. I mean, that's
When we go on that road down the pathway and say we start with the rate increase, we have the ability to roll back the rate increase and roll it all into a tax increase.
not that first part, not once you go down the path.
So we're committed to it.
Right,
That
but
funding mechanism.
if you did that for the first one, it doesn't necessarily obligate you for the 2028 bond.
Right.
You could pull that, it would still be in the supplemental, but you could say, okay, well, I'm not gonna roll that into water rates because now I have all these other numbers. Now I have all the numbers together for tier 2 projects, treatment plant, and that second bond. You could lump all those and say, okay, does it make sense or not to go to the voters to push to the tax side, or do we keep down this path of the water rate side? And you can see that if you did that, at least for the next tranche, you see that right there for that portion.
Is there a threshold where we have to go to the voters, or do we have to go to them regardless?
No, I mean,
Is there a minimum that we can,
Yeah.
or we can be under?
So what the issue is here is the legislature 3 or 4 sessions back passed, what was it, SB 6, SB 2, that requires that districts that are developed, which y'all are, you've constructed 95% or more of the infrastructure you need for full build out, that you can't generate more than 3.5% more income or revenue, tax revenue per year. And so if you go over that number, then you have to have a rollback election. So for instance, if your appraised value, it doesn't mean a tax rate increase. That could be if your appraised values go up by 5%, you actually have to lower your tax rate to not hit that 3.5%.
We went through that last year.
Correct. Yeah, we go through it every year.
But if we do this independently of that, that it become a 3.5% and the appraised values are flat at that point. Let's say we did it in March or whenever it is, right?
So you would do, the way the elections would fall is you would have that election in November because you set your tax rate typically in the August and September timeframe. The deadline to call an election is mid-August, so it would be a November election. So let's say you said, all right, I'm gonna set a tax rate that's gonna generate, just making up a number, 10% more revenue. So I'm over the 3.5. You have that election in November, that election passes, you now reset your bar at that 10% higher number. Let's say, it's a 20-cent tax rate, just for whatever district. So next year, you're starting off of that as your step-up basis, and you're 3.5% off of that. You don't go back down to it's not a one-time deal.
But what you answered, I think, is this would be concurrent with our normal tax increase because of the timing of it,
Correct,
right? So we would
Correct.
tie into the risk, increased appraisals
correct.
and the new fiscal year.
Correct.
And so we would bundle this all together and be one.
what you wouldn't want to do, which Brad was talking about earlier, is just try to do that multiple times every other year. That would be.
I get that.
That would be cumbersome. So you'd want to bundle it up. If you're going to entertain that, you'd want to bundle it up and go to them once. And, see if you can.
And the way these two bonds are structured, 2026, 2028, they're both independent. They're
Yeah.
not bundled.
So the way it's proposed right now is it would be included in one supplemental agreement for 2 tranches of bonds not to exceed 75 million. And part of that is because of the timing of how quickly the River Authority thinks they can do the project. So, that's why it's being separated into two pieces. Based on this analysis here, to Eric's point, it doesn't make a big enough dent in cost, even if you bundle them together. If for some reason they said, yeah, I can do all these projects in a short period of time and make it comply with federal tax law standards. Even if you could do that, the dollar amount increase still doesn't justify going the rollback route. Most likely, we talked about it internally, it's probably not going to make sense to go the rollback route until you get to the wastewater treatment. That's probably going to be the large enough dollar item, whether it's 75 or 150, whatever that number ends up being. That's going to be large enough to, if you want to consider a rollback, that's going to be when you're going to want to do it.
And generally speaking, when you go to the tax side, it starts to push, the bigger that the tax side gets, it starts to push more of the tax burden on the commercial and non-residential. At this smaller number, there's not much of a delta. There is in some, you can see in some districts, there's a difference, but as the number grows, that differential starts to increase. Right. So you wouldn't want to do it for small increments.
We don't have commercial within what, 7, right?
No.
But you do have all your residents, homesteads get the 20%, and then you have your over 65 and disabled that get an additional exemption that, folks who have second homes or folks who have rental homes or what have you don't get the benefit of that. So you would still be able to have some more marginal, but some level of shift from your residents to other property owners in the district.
What surprised me about this, one of the things that surprised me is that the supplemental agreement commits us to paying back to the River Authority their costs of their bonds, but it doesn't spell out how we generate the revenue to pay them. Those are disconnected discussions. Okay, which is kind of like, yeah, I want to buy that car, give me the keys, and then if I drive for a couple of months, I'll think about how I pay you back. And that,
And this will be a unified trustee decision across the entire Woodlands, correct? Will not be an individual, we'll give you direction, but individual MUDs will not be going in different directions.
supplemental agreements are by MUD. And our goal is that every MUD should do the similar thing. I mean, it would be disappointing if we had a MUD that said, I'm going to do X, and all other MUDs said, I'm going to do Y. That the communication, like, are you guys not on the same page, or what's going on
I
there?
think it'd also be weird to have an election for some MUDs and not others to do this.
Yeah. So I think the takeaway here is make sure we got as much data as we can, get stuff going on the first bond, get the transmission line projects moving, get the cost assessments and the plan for the treatment plant, and then see how we bring them together, whether it's, continue on water rate, wastewater rate.
If we're gonna do
increases.
tax increase, we have to tie it into the November numbers too.
Yeah.
So it has to be, lined up fiscally annually.
In 2 years' time, would we be ready to
In
move?
2 years, we should be ready.
Because you're limiting yourself to 2 years.
Just one point of clarification on kind of to your analogy there. So the supplementals will obligate all the districts to pay the River Authority for the bonds through wholesale rates. And so all the districts, regardless of whether, so districts are agreeing that they're going to pay an increased wholesale rate to the River Authority. Where they come up with the money, like the guy who's buying the car, he's not saying, I'm going to come up with the money by working at this job or working at that job. It's just, I'm going to pay you this amount every month. And so that's just a little bit of a tweak on that. But we do commit to pay it back on wholesale rate, but that doesn't obligate us, the MUDs, to pass that on retail rates.
This is a good analysis. Thank you.
Adam's group did all the background. I just made the front page. So we'll tie it together, but thank you.
So revised draft supplemental agreement next.
That's the hope. I mean, we got to work internally and visit about the terms, but that's the hope. I just don't want to rush it.
Okay.
That's the hope. I mean, the River Authority had wanted a vote by July. If it if it works, great. If we need to, push it, because we'll also have new directors and we have to educate and not want them to feel rushed. So when everybody's ready, the goal is to get 10 MUDs to all agree. And I don't want the schedule to be the enemy of unanimity. So that's the goal in the end.
Do we send the questions to you that we have on the supplementary?
Sure, yeah, definitely.
Plan to have an all March meeting on the subject.
Yes, there'll be, we're looking at something probably in June. Don't have a date. Ideally, and the reason why we don't have a date is we gotta figure out a location. And we don't have a location big enough that's a meeting place for all the MUDs. Because we had adopted a resolution across the MUDs to utilize the community center across the street, which doesn't exist. So there's not one for Brady Community Center. And I don't know if there's one for Estuary. So Estuary's training facility there at the treatment plant can only hold 38, 40, it's close. We know Brady can hold all of us. I don't know if a lot of the existing directors that have been here for a while are going to attend because this is just kind of an update. So I just don't know how big of a facility we're going to need, but we'll have to probably put a resolution on all the MUDs in June to get approved locations. Be it wherever our options are. So that we can officially have a public meeting in those places.
We go ahead and put a preliminary placeholder on location and calendar prior to the June meeting, or you gonna wait until after the June meeting to try to calendar
No,
something?
we're gonna try to look see if we can get on their schedule. The location, the Brady's
Ready.
fills up pretty good, pretty quick. So we just need to find a good date that works for everybody.
Yeah, we also gotta publish that notice of the new meeting location. So we'll have to calendar all that stuff out to make sure we leave enough time after the meeting to get published in the newspaper and all the legal requirements.
And you're still gonna do the Director 101 or sometime also, right?
Yeah, that's all of my report here in a minute.
Okay. Move on. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, great discussion on supplemental agreement. More to come on that now. Okay. You got a quick update on River Branch, Panther Creek?
No update at this point. There 67 was looking to have a meeting with local municipalities and folks to see if there was additional funding we could get there. But ultimately, we still need to go after the Corps of Engineers for the overall funding.
Trying to report. Anything else?
Nothing additional.
Okay. Back to you, Eric.
All right. Page 74 is the beginning of the general manager's report. Want to point out a couple of things this month. On page 74 is our summary of open projects that this is either new or redevelopment, could be residential, commercial, different things. As you can see on there, we have 178 open projects. That's where we're reviewing drawings. We're doing inspections as they get close to completion or at completion of those projects. We had about 44 customer service inspections last month that are kind of tied to some of that. Also, we went through about just over 1,200 work orders across the Woodlands last month as well.
What are you doing at McCullough Junior High?
I don't have the details. That's okay.
They're doing a lot of renovations at the
It's
school.
massive.
Yeah.
To drive by and see. Big
It's what?
expansion.
It's just
Throughout.
I said, who says enrollment's going on?
Next page, you start to see some summary pictures on drainage. Wanted to bring this spreadsheet to you. This is a summary of all the active drainage related projects that were approved on the MUD's budgets for this fiscal year. As you recall, we identified condition-based assessment of the ditches and then recommended an approved budget for this year. So this is kind of what we use behind the scenes for projects that our subcontractors are working on, mostly pipe failures and siltation, things like that. So green are projects that have been completed. As you can see, there's different levels of projects across different MUDs. We looked at areas where we could group 3 or 4 projects on the same ditch all in one. So we gotta hit those first. Those are a little bit more efficient to do when we can lump them up. And now we're kind of to the point where there's projects that are kind of scattered out. We'll be hitting those over the rest of this fiscal year. So, and then the projects in 10 or whatever that is, those are projects that require coordination with the landowner where, we may have to put someone out of service or, close down the golf course for a few days, things like that, but we also do coordination on. So, wanted to give you just a bird's eye view of all of that. And this doesn't include the work that our crew is doing. So the crew that we hired earlier this year, they've been hitting the ground running as well, focusing a lot on overgrowth trimming and then desilting in some of the minor siltation areas. A lot of the road crossings where we box covers going to the road, there's a lot of siltation in some of those areas, and our crews are tackling that as well. So a lot of work going on.
Is this on the G drive?
If not, we can put it on there for sure.
Include a link on it. So we can sort on, but.
Wanted to point out AWD conferences in June. So if you hadn't registered and intend to go, it's June 18, 19, 20. It'll be in Grapevine at Gaylord. And so that's Association Water Board Directors. It's a good, and so Association Water Board Directors is an organization that assists my directors in learning about many things. And so they have a couple events throughout the year. Their big event is the summer conference, and they have what they call a midwinter conference in January. And so the summer conference is typically a day longer. And then they'll have some kind of a breakfast and a dinner in the spring and fall as well. That'll just be here local, be about an hour and a half, 2 hour type of event. So if you're interested in registering for AWD conference in summer, reach out to Shelley and she can assist you in heading in that direction. We just asked the new director orientation. We're looking at putting that. So last few years of the elections, we've conducted a new director orientation where we introduce our team at WWA. We talk a little bit about what our responsibilities are, STRAs, et cetera. And so we're tentatively scheduling that for June 12th. And more to come on that. We'll send out notices on that as we get closer. That will be here. And that will be for the new directors. And then also a tentative all mud meeting to give everybody update on the water line projects, tier 1 projects, those and the supplemental. And don't have a date, like I mentioned a minute ago, but we'll work on them then.
You're combining water line technical update with the supplemental agreement in one meeting.
Yes, yeah, it'll be kind of an update on where we are with those projects. And on page there it is. On page 95, you see a letter from the GRP talking about the global amendment and the associated percent pro rata vote. And so Woodland's division is about 22% of the vote. I recall that the global amendment passed needs 85% of all those members there. You can see there, and those are members of the GRP as it sits, and their usage for 2025. That's how it's established. And then, as we have done so often, we like to include. We have several customers that took it upon themselves to actually write thank you notes and mail them in to us. So I always like to include those so that directors can see all the great work that our guys in the field are doing. And with that, I'll take it to John for communications.
Good evening. Page 86 through 90 is your communications report. I just want to quickly touch on 2 items within that report. First, noting that we've wrapped up the pilot program for our first school-based water education, water conservation program that's for fifth graders that happened at Tough Elementary. They've been working with that program for the last month or so. We will evaluate the outcomes from that program, make any adjustments that are needed, and then look to ideally implement that across all fifth grades in the township next year. So more to come on that one. And did want to note that is a joint venture with the township and SGRA working together on that one. So pretty exciting project. And then secondly, on page 87, you'll see Eric there with an award in his hand. So we've got the Watermark Award for Communications Excellence from the Texas section of the American Waterworks Association. So that was presented at the TAWA conference in San Antonio a few weeks ago. Eric went down there and received that for our efforts with WaterSmart. So we were able to bring WaterSmart registration from 17% to, I think we're probably about 81 right now, in less than 3 year span. So exciting to receive that. And then on the next few pages, you can see examples of our current communications. If you have questions on any of that, please let me know. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks to our trustee report on page 91. I think we covered most of this. Trustees, a good discussion on the 10-year project plan, which we went through again today. And also we talked quite a bit about there's some about the GRP global agreement, how the voting is going to go on that. And I guess they stepped down, but they're still working on revisions to the global amendment. Is there anything else you want to mention, trustee?
Just that the trustees did approve the work on the Wixbury Trip Plan to move forward. That was a big item. Oh, and one I forgot to mention, the GRP meeting that's scheduled for next Tuesday has been moved to this Thursday due to scheduling. So just point that out. Mention that.
You need someone to go to that?
He goes, it's this Thursday, I plan to go. I think I'll be available. Okay. Brian, closed session?
Yes, sir, not necessary.
Okay. Anything that we haven't talked about for future agendas? Talked about a couple of things, come back. Okay. Got 6 minutes, 7 minutes to spare.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.